Welcome back to CrimePod Castle's Twisted Love, Crimes of Passion series, episode 8.
Oh, wow. Episode 8 already.
I know, right? Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Today we're diving deep into a case that's, well, it's as chilling as it is thought-provoking.
Definitely.
The murder of Surjit Kaur in Punjab, India, back in 2012.
Yeah, that one was,
It's a story where love and tradition just clash head-on.
yeah.
And it leaves behind just a trail of heartbreak.
Mm-hmm.
And it raises some really uncomfortable questions about the price of defiance.
For sure. This case, it really shows how traditions, especially the ones that are so deep in a culture, can be twisted,
Yeah,
twisted into tools of oppression, even violence.
absolutely. And for Surjit, she was a 22-year-old woman, just full of life, intelligent, ambitious.
Right.
She was a college student
Wow.
with dreams for her future.
Yeah.
And she fell in love with a young man named Sahil.
Okay.
And, on the surface, that sounds like a pretty normal thing.
Yeah, of course. Two young people falling in love.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But in Surjit's world, things were a lot more complicated.
Right. Because in India, the caste system, it still plays a big role.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's this ancient social hierarchy that dictates your social standing, your opportunities, even who you're allowed to love.
Wow.
And Surjit and Sahil, they were from different castes.
Okay, so in a culture where defying these norms like that can be seen as dishonor,
Oh, absolutely.
what did Surjit's family do?
Well, they reacted really swiftly.
Yeah.
And to be honest, quite terrifyingly.
Yeah.
Their immediate response wasn't to try to understand or to, bridge the gap.
Right.
They launched a frantic search for Surjit,
Really?
saying publicly that she'd been kidnapped and manipulated.
So imagine the pressure she must have felt, knowing her family not only didn't accept her choice, but they were actively trying to separate her from the man she loved.
Yeah, it's almost unimaginable, isn't it?
Totally.
To be caught between the person you love and your family, who are supposed to be your bedrock.
Right. And for Surjit and Sahil, what must it have been like to be so in love that you risk everything?
I know.
Even your family's acceptance to be together.
Right. They ultimately eloped
Wow.
to escape the judgment and build a life on their own terms.
So for a while, it seemed like they found some peace and happiness.
Yeah.
Away from everything happening back home,
Mm-hmm.
building a new life, unaware of the dark plan that was taking shape.
Right. Surjit's family, they eventually tracked them down.
Right.
And instead of getting angry or resorting to violence, they chose a different route, deception.
Really?
Yeah. They appealed to her sense of family,
No.
promising her acceptance and reconciliation if she just came home.
It's chilling.
It really is.
How they used family, that bond that's supposed to be about love and support,
Right.
as a weapon to lure her back to a situation that would be fatal.
Yeah, you're exactly right. This
Yeah.
wasn't about bringing Surjit home. It was about restoring their honor.
Wow.
And for them, that restoration came at a horrifying price.
Yeah.
Surjit's life. On April 3rd, 2012, Surjit's body was found in her family home.
Oh my gosh.
The cause of death, strangulation.
It's hard to even imagine your
Wow.
own family driven by a sense of honor taking your life.
Right. The police knew quickly this wasn't a suicide. Like, they tried to make it seem.
Right.
Her father and uncle were the ones who did it.
Wow. The police in Punjab really had their work cut out for them.
They did.
This wasn't just about solving a murder.
No.
It was about cracking open a societal problem.
Right. They had to be so careful with cultural sensitivity while also gathering evidence to make sure justice was served.
And did they?
They did. Through a lot of investigation, they got confessions from both the father and the uncle.
Wow.
And those confessions, along with forensic evidence and witness testimonies, it painted this horrifying picture of an honor killing,
Yeah.
premeditated. It became clear that Surjit's choice to marry outside her caste was just unforgivable to them.
Unforgivable.
And it needed to be corrected, even if it meant silencing her forever.
Wow. It makes you think about the power of tradition.
It does?
How deeply rooted these beliefs must be to drive someone to do something so horrific.
Yeah.
And how courageous was Surjit to challenge those norms knowing what could happen.
It's a complex question.
Yeah.
It speaks to a bigger issue here, a societal acceptance, or at least a silence around these honor killings.
Right.
The case showed a disturbing trend. Many in Surjit's village, they supported the family,
Right.
citing tradition as justification.
Wow. So imagine that silence, the
Yeah.
lack of outcry. It probably emboldens those who believe violence is okay to uphold these notions of honor.
Yeah.
It's a chilling reality, isn't it?
It is.
This idea that a community's silence is like an endorsement of this horrific act.
Yeah, and that silence makes it even harder to address the problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How do you even begin to dismantle those beliefs that are so entrenched?
Right.
And how do you make sure justice prevails, not just for Surjit, but for countless others facing similar threats?
You're raising a crucial point. The trial for Surjit's murder was a landmark case in India's fight against honor killings. It wasn't just about punishing two people. It was about sending a message that this wouldn't be tolerated.
So what happened at the trial?
Well, the prosecution presented a very compelling case.
Yeah.
They relied on the confessions, the forensic evidence, and the witness testimonies.
Mm-hmm.
They argued that this was premeditated murder driven by honor. The defense, on the other hand, they tried to paint a picture of a family driven to desperation because of what their daughter did, highlighting the cultural context to try and lessen the severity of the crime.
It must have been so tense.
Oh, yeah.
With all that societal pressure.
Right. Did the court acknowledge those nuances while still upholding the law?
That's a good question. So what happened?
Well, they did. The judge acknowledged the deep traditions, but he said firmly that culture could never justify taking a life.
Wow.
He emphasized individual rights, especially the right to choose who you love and marry, and that the law would protect those rights no matter what.
That's powerful. So what was the outcome?
Both Surjit's father and uncle were found guilty of murder and conspiracy.
Wow.
They got life in prison in 2013.
Wow. That must have sent shockwaves through the country.
It did. It showed that the legal system was starting to take a stronger stance against these honor killings.
So it sounds like a victory, but also bittersweet.
It does.
Because justice was served, but a young life was lost.
Right. And it makes you wonder, did this actually spark any change in how society thinks?
Yeah. Did it get rid of the problem completely?
No, not completely. But it did bring honor killings into the national conversation.
Oh, okay.
The media coverage, the public outcry, the debates, it forced people to confront this.
So Surjit's death, as tragic as it was, became a catalyst for change.
You could say that it spurred calls for legal reform, stricter enforcement of laws, and more support for organizations working to protect women's rights.
Okay.
It also brought attention to the role of education and awareness in combating these prejudices.
So it's a reminder that even with this tragedy, there can be a ripple effect.
Absolutely.
A wave of change that pushes us to a better future.
It's a testament to Surjit's courage, her defiance, and the power of her story to inspire change.
It's interesting, though, to think about what happened after.
Yeah.
We focused on Surjit's family and the legal battle. What about Sahil?
Right.
How did he cope with losing her?
Yeah, his story often gets overshadowed by the perpetrators and the legal stuff.
Right.
Understandably, he went into hiding after she died.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
He feared for his safety, but eventually he came out of hiding.
Good for him.
Not as a victim, but as an advocate.
Oh, wow. So he turned his grief into action.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He channeled his pain into raising awareness about honor killings.
Wow.
He shared Surjit's story and demanded justice for others facing this.
That's incredible. He turned his tragedy into a platform for change?
He did. He became a voice for the voiceless, a symbol of hope.
Wow.
His actions show another important thing, the role of survivors and their ability to drive change.
Right. It makes you wonder
if
Surjit's family had truly understood how much she loved Sahil.
Right.
If they had seen him as worthy instead of a threat, would things have been different?
It's a heartbreaking question. And it doesn't have an easy answer.
Yeah.
It makes you think about empathy.
Yeah.
About really seeing those who are different. If they had chosen understanding, this could have been avoided.
And that brings us to a big question. Even though Surjit's case sparked outrage, are these honor killings still happening in India?
Sadly, yes. It's still a reality in many parts of the country.
Wow.
Those beliefs fueled by patriarchy and this sense of honor, they continue to claim lives.
It's a reminder that even with progress, we have a long way to go. So what's being done now?
Well, on the legal side, there have been some good developments.
Like what?
India has made its laws against honor killings stronger,
Okay.
pushing for stricter enforcement and tougher penalties.
Good.
And the judges are recognizing that culture can't be an excuse for murder.
That's encouraging. So the legal system is getting better at protecting people.
It is. But the law alone can't fix this.
So what else needs to happen?
We need to address the cultural and societal norms that are causing this violence.
That sounds really difficult. How do you change attitudes that have been passed down for generations?
Well, this is a long process.
Yeah.
But it's not impossible. Education is key. We need to start early teaching kids about equality and respect.
Yeah.
And the importance of individual choice.
Yeah.
We need to empower women, give them access to education, economic opportunities, and a voice.
So it's about changing the narrative.
It is.
Moving away from this idea that a woman's worth is tied to her family's honor.
Exactly.
And towards a society that values individual dignity and freedom.
Precisely. And that shift needs open dialogue, community engagement, and a willingness to challenge beliefs, even when it's hard.
Right.
We need to create a culture where violence is never the answer, where differences are celebrated, and where love can grow without fear.
What about the international community? Can they help address this in India?
Absolutely. International pressure can help.
How so?
By shining a light on these human rights violations, supporting groups on the ground, and pushing for policy changes.
Okay.
The global community can help create an environment where this isn't tolerated.
So it's a team effort.
It is.
A responsibility to make sure basic human rights are upheld no matter where you are or what your culture is.
You got it. This isn't just India's problem. It's a global issue.
Right.
And it needs a global response.
Right.
We all have a part to play in creating a world where love wins over tradition, where choice is respected, and where tragedies like Surjit's never happen again.
Let's go. Where do we go from here?
Well, first, awareness is key. Talk about these issues. Share stories like Surjit's Educate Yourselves and others.
Okay.
Knowledge is power. The more we understand these things, the better we can challenge them.
So it's about starting conversations, getting people to think about these issues that might be happening quietly around them.
Exactly. And it's about supporting organizations that are fighting this violence and empowering women.
Right.
There are so many groups doing amazing work both in India and around the world.
I can imagine donations, volunteering, even just spreading the word can help.
Absolutely. Every little bit counts. And most importantly, don't be afraid to speak up if something feels wrong.
Yeah.
If you think someone's being forced into marriage, if you see signs of abuse or control, say something.
So be an active bystander.
Right.
Knowing that even a small action could save a life.
Exactly. Reach out for help. Call the authorities. Connect with an organization that works on these issues.
Right.
You could be the difference for someone trapped in a bad situation.
This all started with one woman's story, but it's opened up a conversation about so much more.
It has.
Human rights, our responsibility to make a better world.
Yeah. It makes you realize these problems, while rooted in certain cultures, aren't just in one place.
It's a sobering thought, but a call to action.
Right. We can't ignore injustice no matter where it is.
Exactly. And it's a reminder that even small actions can make a difference.
For sure. By speaking out, educating ourselves, supporting those working for change, we're part of a bigger movement.
Yeah.
Towards a world where love and freedom are more important than oppressive traditions.
Surjit Kaur's story is so sad, but also so powerful.
It is.
Her courage, her defiance, it gives us hope.
And it shows us that change is possible. It won't happen overnight, and it takes effort from everyone.
Yeah.
But if we learn from Surjit, if we challenge these harmful things wherever we see them, we can make a future where love is celebrated, not punished, and everyone is free.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into a truly heartbreaking, but ultimately hopeful story. We hope you'll keep following CrimePod Castle for more deep dives into the complexities of human experience. Don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with anyone interested in exploring these important issues. And as always, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged in the fight for a more just and compassionate world.
Yeah, it really is chilling that silence can almost feel like support for something so awful. And it makes it even harder to get to the root of the problem.
Totally. I mean, how do you even start to dismantle a whole belief system? And more importantly, how do you ensure that justice happens, not just for Surjit, but for everyone else who might be facing this kind of threat?
You're right. That's a crucial point. Surjit's trial became this landmark case in India's fight against these honor killings.
Yeah,
Yeah, it wasn't just about punishing those two individuals. It was about showing everyone that these acts wouldn't be accepted anymore.
So what happened during the trial? What was it like?
Well, the prosecution had a strong case.
Okay.
You know, they
Yeah.
used the confessions, the forensic evidence, and the witness statements.
Right.
They argued that it was a clear case of murder, planned in advance, and driven by this idea of honor.
Okay.
The defense, though, they tried to paint a picture of this family who was desperate because of what their daughter had done.
Right.
They kept bringing up the cultural context,
Yeah.
most to try and make the crime seem less serious.
It must have been so tense in that courtroom,
Oh, it was.
especially with all the societal pressure. Did the court acknowledge those cultural aspects while still upholding the law?
That's a really good question. It's like a balancing act. So what happened?
They did. The judge, he acknowledged how deep these traditions run,
Okay.
but he also stated very clearly that Culture could never be used to justify taking a life.
Wow.
He emphasized that people have rights,
Yes.
especially the right to choose who to love and marry.
Right.
And he said the law would always protect those rights regardless of any societal pressures.
That's a powerful statement. So what was the final outcome?
Surjit's father and uncle were both found guilty of murder and conspiracy,
Oh.
and they were sentenced to life in prison back in 2013.
That must have sent shockwaves through India.
It did. It showed that the legal system was finally starting to take a stand against these honor killings.
It sounds like a victory, but it's also so sad. You know,
Yeah.
justice was served, but a young life was cut short.
Right. And it makes you wonder, did Surjit's case lead to any real change in people's attitudes? That's the big question, right? Did her case change things completely?
Well, no, not completely. But it did bring the whole issue of honor killings to the forefront.
Okay.
There was so much media coverage, public outcry debates. It forced people to face this horrible reality.
So Surjit's death, as tragic as it was, sparked some kind of change.
You could say that it led to people demanding legal reform, stricter enforcement of existing laws, and more support for those organizations that protect women's rights.
Okay.
It also highlighted how important education and awareness are when it comes to tackling these deep-seated prejudices.
It's like a reminder that even in the face of such a horrible loss, something good can come from it.
It is a wave of change that pushes us towards a better future.
It speaks to Surjit's courage,
It does.
her bravery in defying these traditions. And it shows how powerful her story is, even though she's no longer with us.
Absolutely. It's interesting, though, to think about what happened after.
Right. We've been talking about her family in the trial, but what about Sahil?
Yeah.
How did he cope with losing her?
You know, his story often gets lost in all the focus on the people who did this in the legal proceedings.
Right.
It makes sense that he went into hiding after Surjit died.
I can't even imagine what that must have been like.
He was afraid for his own safety, but eventually he came out of hiding.
That's good.
Not as a victim, but as an advocate.
Really?
Wow.
So he turned his grief into action.
He did. He focused all his energy on raising awareness about honor killings, sharing Surjit's story, and demanding justice for others who might be in danger.
He took something so horrible and turned it into a way to help others.
He did. He became a voice for those who couldn't speak up, a symbol of resilience and hope.
That's incredibly inspiring. His actions really highlight the importance of survivors and their ability to create change.
They do. It makes you wonder, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If Surjit's family had truly understood the depth of her love for Sahil, if they'd seen him as someone worthy of her love instead of as a threat, would things have turned out differently?
It's a heartbreaking question,
Yeah.
and one that probably doesn't have a clear answer.
No, it doesn't.
Yet.
It makes you think about the power of empathy, of truly seeing and understanding people who are different from us.
You're right. If they'd chosen understanding over prejudice, maybe this tragedy could have been avoided. And that brings up another important question. Even though Surjit's case caused so much outrage, are honor killings still a problem in India?
Unfortunately, they are. It's still a reality in many parts of the country.
That's terrible.
Those deeply rooted beliefs, they're fueled by these patriarchal systems and this misplaced sense of honor.
Yeah.
And they continue to take lives. It's a stark reminder that even with all the progress that's been made, we still have a long way to go.
So what's being done about it? Have things improved at all since Surjit's case?
On the legal side, there have been some positive changes.
Oh, good. What kind of changes?
India has strengthened its laws against honor killings.
Okay.
They're pushing for stricter enforcement and harsher penalties.
Good.
And the judges are starting to recognize that culture cannot be used as an excuse for murder.
That's encouraging. So it sounds like the legal system is getting better at protecting those at risk.
It is. But the law can't solve everything on its own.
Right. So what else needs to happen?
We have to address those cultural and societal norms that are at the root of this violence.
That sounds incredibly challenging. I mean, how do you change attitudes and beliefs that have been around for generations?
It's definitely a long and complex process.
I could imagine.
But it's not impossible. Education is absolutely crucial. We need to start teaching children from a young age about equality, respect, and the importance of making their own choices.
Right.
We need to empower women by giving them access to education, economic opportunities, and a voice in their own lives.
So it's about changing the way we think about these things. Moving away from the idea that a woman's value is tied to her family's honor.
Right.
And moving towards a society that values individual dignity and freedom of choice.
You've got it. And making that shift requires open and honest conversations, engagement with communities, and a willingness to challenge those long-held beliefs, even when it's uncomfortable.
Absolutely. We need to create a culture where Violence is never end for that. Differences are celebrated, and love can thrive without fear. Can the international community play a role in addressing this issue in India?
Absolutely. International pressure can be a powerful force for change.
Oh, so?
By bringing attention to these human rights violations, by supporting organizations working on the ground, and by advocating for policy changes, the global community can help create an environment where these practices are no longer acceptable.
So it really is a team effort.
It is.
A shared responsibility to make sure that basic human rights are protected everywhere, regardless of cultural differences.
Exactly. This isn't just an issue for India, it's a global issue.
Right.
And it requires a global response.
Yeah.
We all have a role to play in building a world where love is more important than tradition, where individual choices are respected, and where stories like Surjit's never happen again.
That's a powerful statement.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here? What can our listeners do to help make a difference?
That's a great question. Well, I think the first thing is just being aware, talking about these issues, sharing stories like Surjit's, educating ourselves and others.
Yeah. It's like sparking those conversations, getting people thinking about these things that could even be happening in their own families.
Yeah, exactly. And also supporting those organizations that are working so hard to fight this and empower women.
Right.
There are so many groups out there doing amazing work, both in India and all over the world.
Yeah, I bet. So I imagine donating, volunteering, or even just spreading the word about these organizations could make a real difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Every little bit counts. And it's really important?
What's that?
Don't be afraid to speak up if something feels wrong.
Right.
If you think someone's being forced into a marriage, or if you see any signs of abuse, don't stay silent.
It's like being an active bystander, right?
Okay.
Knowing that even a small action from us could save someone's life.
You got it. Reach out for help. Call the authorities or get in touch with an organization that specializes in these issues.
Right.
Your voice could be the difference for someone who's trapped.
We started with one woman's story, but this has really opened up a conversation about so much more.
It has.
Global issues, human rights, our responsibility to create a better world.
It really makes you think. These problems, while they often start in specific cultures, they aren't limited to one place.
It's definitely a sobering thought, but also a call to action.
It is. We can't just ignore injustice wherever it's happening.
It reminds us that even small actions can have a ripple effect.
Exactly. By speaking out, educating ourselves, and supporting those fighting for change, we become part of something bigger.
Yeah.
A movement towards a world where love and freedom win over oppressive traditions.
Surjit Kaur's story is heartbreaking, but it's also incredibly powerful.
It is.
Her bravery in the face of all that, it gives us hope.
It does, and it shows us that change is possible. It
Right.
might not be easy, and it'll take time and effort from everyone. But if we learn from Surjit, if we challenge these harmful practices whenever we see them, we can create a future where love is something to celebrate, not something to punish, and where every single person has the freedom to choose their own path.
That's a beautiful thought.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into such a powerful story.
Yeah.
It's been truly heartbreaking, but also ultimately hopeful. We hope you'll stick with CrimePod Castle for more thought-provoking deep dives into the human experience. And don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with anyone who might be interested in these important issues. As always, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged in the fight for a more just and compassionate world.